Don't let rampant politics and clusterfuckery ruin all your projects and your sanity. Smooth ugly penny lines and make it all make sense. Get experience by osmosis here on Corporate Underpants.
There it is, the song that always cracks me up. I'm that person laughing at their own jokes. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Corporate Underpants. This is episode 11. Oh my God, can you believe it? It is 10 a.m. on Thursday, May 15th, 2025, here in Seattle on a beautiful, hazy spring day. And I'm Tamara Adlin, your host. This is my baby, Corporate Underpants, and we are here to talk about the real issues that tend to get in the way of releasing great products or new systems or things that make sense. And that is top of mind this week. If you follow me on LinkedIn or get my Corporate Underpants newsletter, you will have seen that I am on a rant, which happens on a regular basis, at least once a quarter, because things are too freaking hard to use. All of us are online arguing about how AI is going to take over our jobs. And meanwhile, I couldn't use a coupon at Starbucks. And I also was that person standing in the self-checkout for 5 minutes until the nice lady had to come help me use one of those scan coupons that then had to open an web-based browser for Fred Meyer, which then then I had to separately open my app. And when I opened my app, I had to log in. And when I had to log in, the coupon wasn't there. And there were 17 rewards programs all lined up on there. And I could not get the thing to work. And I was bound and determined to get my Chobani oat milk unsweetened barista blend at $1.99. So the nice lady had to help me. The nice lady is in caps. And the nice lady was clearly sick of helping people that she considered elderly and out of touch. Now that I am elderly and out of touch, even though I'm in the business of making things more usable, I am encountering stupid stuff all the time. A lot of it has to do with us, companies, not us. We're perfect. Companies adding and adding and adding features and benefits and boosts and new rewards programs that can leave the rest of us completely and utterly confused. And it's ironic because companies start things like reward programs and coupons to delight their customers and keep them there and make them want to use the app and make them shop more often. Whereas at least for some of us, it's leaving us completely frustrated, which is the opposite of what they want. And at this point in time, I'm going to say this, I'm going out on a limb. It should be insanely easy to use an online coupon. I'm just going to say it. There, I said it. You can let me have it if you want to. I said it. So that's what's top of mind today while we're all out there trying to redefine what we do. And of course, we're in a panic because of AI. And listen, AI is never going to solve the problem that people keep fucking things up and making things more complicated. And we haven't yet nailed user experience. And if we haven't yet nailed it, then the examples aren't there. And if the examples aren't there, then AI can't reuse them as a data set. Yes, we're in a panic now, but people managing people is still going to be a problem anytime anybody tries to create something. It's actually an optimistic stance that things are still fucked up. Okay, on that note, I have a really great guest today, a guest, an officer and a gentleman. This is someone I've known for many years. In fact, I have no idea how I met them. This is Andy Fitzgerald, and I'm going to tell you who Andy is. Andy is an independent information architect and content strategy consultant. He works with mission-driven organizations to craft information design solutions that communicate complexity clearly. I love that. It's very hard to say. It's even harder to do. Align business and user goals. You know how I love that. And scale effectively over time. So he likes nice companies that are trying to get bigger and make more sense. We all love that. Over the last decade and a half, Andy has completed and delivered work for a wide variety of clients, from 3-person startups to big departmental units of the World Health Organization, which we hope still exists. And prior to forming his own practice 9 years ago, Andy held design and director positions with Frog and Deloitte. And Andy Fitzgerald, welcome. Welcome to the stage. How are you?
Thank you, Tamara. I'm good. I have also not heard your theme song, and it is hilarious.
I know. It's bouncy.
It is bouncy.
So, Andy, you are also the proud new father of 2 ragdoll kittens.
Yes.
Names?
Poppy and Ella
And Ella.
Fitzgerald.
When we were prepping, you did a very good impression of one of your cats, which is leaning against the banister. Will you
Yes.
do that?
She's now curled up into a little ball, a little adorable ball of potential energy and mayhem that will unleash itself perhaps later this afternoon, perhaps in 10 minutes. We'll find out. Prior to that, she was leaned up against a railing. There's
See, I thought that was really good. Where one of their lips, like,
Yeah.
how is that possibly comfortable kind of thing?
Kittens.
Do you remember how we met? Because I don't.
I want to say that Mark introduced us.
Mark Weeman, who hopefully is here today listening to us before he gets his knee chopped up into little pieces and reassembled tomorrow.
Weird hobbies. I'm not judging. Mark, you do you.
Andy and I have worked on projects together. We have become friends. We get together regularly with other senior UX people and gripe about it in a, I guess, bi-monthly or something taco night called the Gentle Persons of UX.
And design. UX research and design.
UX research and design. So that brings me to, I did a bio for you, but what the hell do you do?
And that brings the question that we very briefly touched on just in our prep is, how does anybody do anymore? And how do you define it? How do we tell stories how do we tell stories about what we do and how we create value when the ground is shifting underneath all of us so quickly? And those of us, I have some colleagues that were affected by Microsoft's latest round of layoffs, and I'm sure you do too. And it's even more confusing when you also don't have a job and you're trying to explain yourself, essentially, which feels at the same time like a kind of a slap in the face and also like an opportunity, because the only way to deal with what's going on right now is to consider these opportunities to redefine and reassert ourselves and how we think about that.
I think this started this great need for reinvention before the tech apocalypse, before Jobmageddon even happened. I was working with startups in the blockchain space, which was my first big mistake, and was shocked that since the early 2000s, it's felt like a progression to me where people had absorbed the need for early stage thinking and clarification and UX and information design. And then suddenly I was working with startups in this new space where they were like, no, we don't have time for that, which was the first shock to me. And that was like in 2018. And I think it's been getting worse. The opportunity has been getting stronger ever since then.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point. And the word of the year last year, and maybe be the word of the year 2 years in a row, the enshittification of products and services, which, if we don't think there's some correlation in people kicking designers out and trying to replace them with anything else, and the enshittification of services, and your coupon story from the very beginning is a very concrete, a shitty experience. Why can't we use coupons now? Why are these things still plaguing us? I received earlier this week an empty envelope from Amazon. I was intending to get a very nerdy piece of equipment for a very nerdy project that we didn't need to go into. And the envelope arrived on my porch, and it was one of their little padded bubble envelopes, yay big. It was unsealed, had never been sealed, and it was just plumb empty. The driver took a picture of it on my porch as proof of delivery, and I looked at him, what the actual fuck is this? Like, how? It's not that we don't know that delivering empty packaging in lieu of actual products is a problem, or that we don't have the methods and processes to fix them. It's the lack of will, perhaps, or I don't know. We could probably spend a lot of time trying to diagnose that. But before we do, I want to touch on the other thing that, as you were talking about the realignment of where we sit in the world, I really appreciate, about a month ago, Jared Spool penned an article about UX design and how the probably decade-long movement of UX design, inviting everyone to the table, saying everyone's a designer, we're all going to co-design, and being really tactical, has undercut UX design and design in general's ability to do the deep thinking, to engage with the kinds of problems that infuriate people like me and getting an empty package, or you with a stupid coupon, or all the million little tiny privilege. Don't get me wrong. Like, these are in terms of the world, these are not, if we were going to address problems, I would start elsewhere. But if we're these tiny little sort of insults that just seem so pointless.
Okay. Tiny little insults is a really interesting way to put it. And Jared Spool's article about inviting everybody to the table, all of this sort of wraps up with my thinking on personas and alignment. And the way that it does is, let's just call it the double diamond of design, right? And there's lots of other ways to do it. There's waterfall or whatever you want to call it. But let's just call it double diamond, no matter what it is. So Spool was saying, like, we're inviting everybody in to be on the designer projects, designer tasks related to the double diamond. And as you said, we know how to we know how to create products that work. And yet what I'm experiencing is the insult of seeing a QR code on a shelf and not being able to use it in a way that makes me feel inept. And if we really look at where that comes from, it has nothing to do with the double diamond. It has to do with external pressures, usually from above, business-related pressures, that we don't get the time to design things right, or design isn't seen as necessary, or whatever. It actually has nothing to do with this place where we're focused on, where the light is brightest for us, where we're all arguing among ourselves about what we should be called and what's the difference between information architecture and taxonomy and all of this stuff. We're like arguing where the light is brightest for us.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, what's really impacting our projects is not in that lit up space. It's not where we're focused.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great visualization. And this reminds me of, I was recently 2 weeks ago at the Information Architecture Conference in Philadelphia, and the talks there and the conversations that I had with all of these brilliant minds assembled in one place over the course of the 4 days that I was out there have really just been churning in my mind ever since then. And some of the themes that came out that you dropped in the description of this are very much in the vein of this conversation and this problem. And one of them is this idea of story, that we need to frame the stories that we tell in a way that resonates with people, and that has to resonate with their values and what their needs are. And that as practitioners, as people who sometimes have very specific things that we do really well, or very technical things, it's more fun for us to focus on the details of that practice, when for other people, all of that stuff it's not even over their head, it's just beside them. They don't care. There are things that you and I just don't care about, and not because they're not important to someone else, but we just have no way to connect them to the things that are important in our lives. So that story piece, I think, and the story of everyone's a designer, to come back to that, because I remember very much living that in design workshops at Deloitte and at Frog. Let's bring everyone in and we'll co-design the thing together. And while bringing people along in the process has a lot of value, and in some instances is a really important tool, it also tells a particular story. And once we have planted that story flag, or those story flags, they become hard to walk back on. In one talk by a friend and colleague of mine, Aaron Leonard, who's a taxonomist at Nike, he talked about the danger of hiding the complexity of taxonomy, or of a knowledge management or knowledge representation system, and that we ideally want to simplify things enough that the people with whom we're discussing them or working on them understand and can have enough of a handhold to care about them. But if we simplify them too much, it looks simplistic, and it looks like we're not actually doing anything, or it looks like the model is too simple to work. So there's a balance of how do we show the complexity we do, not to of what we're doing, not to show off or not to alienate people or not to close the door on people who may be interested but don't have as much experience, but to make sure that value is felt and understood by an organization. And that story, I think, is back to this original question of how do we define ourselves and how do we talk about what we do, is one that, along with all the other challenges, I'm certainly feel like I'm negotiating.
Okay, so let's also bring that back to make that concrete. There's been a running sort of joke argument between us for many years where I keep saying that I don't fully understand what you do. And I have my own picture of what you do and your expertise, which is if I was going to make a website to manage the stars, Andy would have to be on the team, like or a giant forest, right? If that's the information space, if there's places that have so much information, a gazillion pages and a gazillion times 3 paragraphs and however many times that of words that they have to manage or present or make useful or make usable, you're the guy who can tame that. You're the one who can create the paths through the forest or follow the paths through the forest or clean up the paths. And I know that I won't ever fully understand technically what you do in these deep taxonomies and making sense of huge amounts of content and pageless UIs and all of that. I know that's your space. And I know that's a problem that I can't solve, which may be enough to get you work. I don't know. Is it enough usually? How do people, you said you work with mission-driven organizations. How do people know they need you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And historically, for the last 10 years that I've been an independent consultant, they know they need me through my network, really. The work that I do is primarily through introductions of the people that I connect with. And that is an indicator, I think, that I'm not telling that story clearly. And it's like your job's a motorcycle, and like telling the story of the job is a little sidecar on the side, but you can't leave that passenger behind. You have to make sure and bring that person with you and make sure that they're attended to and dump them off bridges or anything. That's a weird metaphor. We'll see how far it goes.
Note to self.
Note to self.
Ride a motorcycle with
metaphor. Yeah. I think there's a gap there. The framing of, so one of the ways that I explain what I do as an information architect is that I help organizations make complex information systems easy to understand and pleasant to use. And that I've sat down and purposely spent some time. How do I explain this? Years ago, and I've said it the exact same way for years since. And I think that the explanation resonates in that we all know what a hard to use system is. We all know what a system that works, but we hate to use is. So it works on that sense, but at the same time, it's still very abstract and it's still very intangible in terms of what's Andy actually going to do. One of the ways that I'm thinking about explaining that better and narrowing down the way that I engage with clients is thinking about content operations. And content operations is the ensemble of people, processes, and technology that we use to create content. And content operations sits inside of, if that's a 3-Venn diagram, it sits inside a larger circle that are business goals. And those business goals sit inside of a still larger circle, which is the context that business operates in, or the organization operates in.
Okay, wait a second. Are companies aware that they have a content operations problem? Or are you introducing this word into business?
In some cases, I am. And the content operations is a process that I learned about I would say my chief teacher in that has been Colleen Jones, who has a very brilliant book called The Content Advantage. Actually out in a new edition now. I haven't read the new edition, but the second edition is fantastic. And also Carrie Hain and Mike Atherton have introduced some of those concepts. But Colleen Jones certainly is the one that I credit with putting the most structure and framework around that. And yeah, I introduce that sometimes. It's also a term that I think is gaining traction. One of the tools that I work with most often with clients is a tool called Sanity. It's a technology tool for managing content. And they have recently shifted the way that they talk about themselves, not as a content management system, but as a content operating system. And they're doing the work to make that label stick.
Okay, so in the same way that I was glad that the book Aligned came out, because it's doing some of the heavy lifting
Yeah.
with bringing the word alignment
Hmm.
into the industry.
Hmm.
Sanity, that software, is helping to bring the word content operations. Let's bring this to those. I think a lot of the people who listen, giant number of people who listen.
Double digits today, maybe?
It's huge. So the way this ties all back to corporate underpants,
Mm.
which is the way that organizational issues and politics and personalities and crap get in the way of us doing our best work, even if we're really good practitioners, is that at this moment, I think it's nearly an impossible task to figure out what problems companies think they have
Mm.
that they want to solve. I think anytime a company has a problem and they look for a consultant or a new hire, they go to the solution first. They try to write the job description,
Yeah.
which is the solution, or they call for an RFP in which they usually overdefine how to fix the problem.
Yeah.
And for me, as somebody who's in another reinvention pattern for myself, it's so hard for us to figure out what the problem is. And right now, any problem that any company has, they're like, oh, AI will solve it. So I'm not going to hire anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of content operations, you asked a minute ago, and then I'm going to come back to this. How do we tell those stories? This is back to storytelling. In terms of content operations, I've been thinking about how to frame this. Every organization does have an approach to content operations. You have an approach to content operations. All of the clients that I work with, whether it is helping them adopt a purposeful, goal-driven content operation strategy, or whether it's helping them rescue one that is completely sideways and counterproductive, and I work with both of those, have a content operation in effect. The problem is, if you didn't design it, then it's not working for you. Just like information architecture, everything that we interact with has a structure. And those structures are designed, or they emerge by default or by design. And if your content operation system has emerged by default, because you have people, processes, and technology, everybody does when you create content. If that emerges by default, it's the defaults of the tool that you're using, or your bad habits, or your corporation's bad habits to get
Okay,
directly to
so
the
actually
underpants.
my example of the coupon turns out to be perfect, right?
Mhm.
So I'm in Fred Meyer or Kroger or where, and I see this scan coupon with a QR code, and I scan it,
Mhm.
and it initiates this whole process that if you look at it in isolation with
Mhm.
people who are already familiar with using on a regular basis the Fred Meyer Kroger app on their phone,
Mhm.
it's probably relatively smooth. But what they're
Mhm.
not considering is that if you don't already understand the content structure, the mental model of rewards versus points versus
Mhm.
QR versus coupons versus flyer, whatever the hell it is,
Yeah.
if you don't already understand that, it can send you into a huge frustration storm. So, to your point, if they keep adding stuff like that individually makes sense,
Mhm.
then they did not design the entire
Yeah,
experience.
exactly.
They can say rationally, we designed really well the new QR code on the shelf experience,
Mhm.
and they could say that they designed the mobile app experience, which they did. And I'm sure they have great designers.
Mhm.
And I'm not critiquing the designers. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
You can have great designers, you can have a great process, you can have a great double diamond, you can test within an inch of your life, and yet the content, the structure can evolve. Barnacle-based design, where things just keep getting added on,
Yeah.
and it gets added on because business wants it to catch up or because a new vendor came in. But if I like the way you said it, if you didn't design it, then you can't control it. So how would a content operations person,
Mm.
I'm putting you on the spot,
Sure.
because
Good.
how would a content operations person come in and attempt to untangle my coupon problem.
Yeah. So I had a conversation with a potential new client yesterday where we dug into this very problem. And I used the same model that I talked about before. And here I'm gonna draw it because we have.
Okay, I'll put a screenshot of this or something in
Oh no,
the,
I'm gonna hold it up to the camera.
I know some people are listening,
Oh,
right? With their
all right.
ears, ear
Here, I'll
holes.
explain it as I go because
Okay.
part of my point. There's my. Oh wow, it's blue, super not readable.
Oh, it's a Venn diagram with
It's
3
a Venn
circles and then a
diagram
bigger
with
circle
a
around
circle
it.
around it and a circle around it. We have. I guess that wasn't really worth the time to draw it. Sorry, everybody. I hope you get that 30 seconds back some other place today. People, processes, and technology. That's our overlapping circles in the middle, inside of business goals, inside of the broader context. And what you just described, the probable evolution of your coupon clusterfuck, was probably pieces that were designed as point solutions or reactions to a particular problem or an executive's pet project or a technology shift or whatever, but were in perhaps even coordinated, but probably not coordinated in the larger circle of business goals or the larger circle of context. And this, as I was having this similar conversation with someone yesterday, they asked, we have this system that is hard to use and doesn't allow us to do the work that we're going to do. How do we fix it? And my response was, you first have to understand your business goal. You have to understand what you need it to do, because
What you needed to do.
yeah, you
That's
can
right. Because
I think it's Arthur Deming, maybe, the difference between a system that is designed. Oh, damn, I'm going to mess up the. Okay, forget about the quote. But you can build something right. There it is. You can build something, but not build the right thing. And if you don't know what
right.
the
So
thing
let's
is,
okay, here's a way to make that concrete. Like let's pretend we're Fred Meyer. Now, if the business goal was of putting up those QR codes on the shelf was to get frequent shoppers to try new products, that would be a different business goal than getting occasional shoppers to become app users.
yes.
Because if the business goal was to get frequent shoppers to try new products, that design probably worked because their phone probably already had the app.
Mm-hmm.
And when they scan the QR code, it probably, and actually the app was probably already on because they were using it during their shopping experience with the coupons. And it would immediately do something in the app that would make it easy for them to try a new product.
Mm-hmm.
If, however, the business goal was to get someone like me to be so intrigued by the $1.99 Chobani barista unsweetened oat milk to actually use the app, then it completely failed. It totally because in the latter case, one person being upset and frustrated is not okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm their goal.
Right.
Catching me on a fish hook is their goal.
Yeah. If you are the goal, I'm thinking of.
That's the question. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If the goal was to get somebody who already has the app to try new products, it probably worked.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of another one of your recent tirades. We should catalog these.
Tirades?
Camera tirades. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your airline boarding pass. You in a comment you mentioned that, or maybe it was a text message, I don't know, that some software engineer took the time and the effort to mansplain to you how you were wrong about that. So telling the user that they're wrong because the app doesn't work for them, of course, as user experience professionals, we know is ridiculous. So you weren't, and I just didn't bother to write this or send it to you. So I'm telling you now, you weren't wrong. You might just have been an edge case. And businesses, this is why that business goals circle matters, because businesses have edge cases. There are some customers that, as you've said, we have to make extremely happy or we completely fail. And there are some customers we just don't care about.
Okay, but in the online boarding pass thing, the edge case there, actually, I'll reject that because my point there is not that, I may be one of the few people that gets confused, which I think is different than an edge case. I think it's that.
That's fair. Sure.
it's not a use case edge case. It's that maybe not that many people are as dumb as I am. But my point is that in design, with something like an online boarding pass and the relatively small amount of work it has to do, there's no excuse for anybody to be confused.
Yeah. Yeah.
There, with the coupon thing, maybe I am an edge case, probably not. But what I think is a really fruitful conversation there is that all of this success, even the definition of the problem, depends on what the finish line is and how you'll know that the project was a success. And that's core to all the alignment work. That's core. It sounds like it's become core to your work as well. And even to you selling your services is getting the focus back on how will you know this project was a success?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And identifying clear metrics and what you're trying to accomplish. I had, as you probably know, I built a taxonomy management tool for this content operating system, Sanity. And I use it with my clients, and some other folks use it as well. And sometimes people write me with questions about it. And someone recently wrote me with some questions about how to structure a taxonomy for a sports site. And I wrote back and gave some pointers about these are the things that you should consider. And the first of them is, what do you need the taxonomy to accomplish?
Yeah.
And then this person wrote back and they said, okay, I've got these structures. Does this look right? And I haven't responded yet. If you're listening, maybe we can do this here. But my response is, I can't tell you if it's right if you can't tell me what you're trying to accomplish. You have to define the goals first. And I think with the speed with which organizations operate and what we've seen recently, this very reflexive reaction to we have to do something with AI. How do you know that's successful if you haven't?
That's not a goal.
It's not a goal.
There's no numbers.
Yeah.
And goals are really interesting too, because you said business goals. And I think like in a more sophisticated way, we've got to, not that you don't, that sounded like criticism. It wasn't. But that when like business goals are central to the alignment persona process, which both of us have used. And the first thing, and it's actually not really business goals, because business goals in the broadest sense are what are we trying to do this year, or OKRs or things like that. What for me anyway, what I have to get to is for this project, for this scanner on the shelf, what numbers have to change by how much in what amount of time.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't accept helping Kroger unless they could tell me, when we initiate the shelf scan system, our primary goal is to get 100 new app downloads a day from previously non-apt customers, or within 3 months of the shelf scanner, or, and probably both of these are relevant, or is our goal to get existing customers with long purchase histories to try one of the scannable products that they've never tried before on each new shopping trip. Now, and that's for this shelf scanner project. It's super narrow. And then forcing the priority. Which one of those is more important? That's not saying we're going to make the other one a terrible experience.
Yeah.
But if you can get to that narrowness, that's the hard part. Because then you can make a taxonomy that does any of those things. I can make a design that does any of those things.
Yeah.
We're ignoring the hard part, which is helping them get to that clarity.
Yeah. Yeah. And aligning on that clarity. And this very much reminds me of a project that you and I did with Seattle Children's years ago, where
Seattle Children's Hospital. Yeah, but this is a great example.
Yeah, where we ran that alignment. You led the alignment personas workshop. That's where I learned about it years ago. And I've used it multiple times since with different clients. But we identified those goals, and then we used, to help them prioritize, we used a Titanic metaphor. Your project is Titanic. There are lifeboats. Everybody, unlike the Titanic, everyone's going to get on the lifeboat. But you can't put everyone on the lifeboat at the same time or it'll flip over. Who gets on the lifeboat first? Nobody's getting left behind. But who gets on first was a way, actually, to come back to a thread, it was a way to tell a story that it gave them a hook into what we were trying to accomplish. It gave them a way to conceptualize and put a frame, even though it was a whimsical. Is it too soon to be whimsical about the Titanic? I don't know. Let's hope not.
It's as if the old website was going to the old website was going to sync and a new website was going to appear. And who do you have to
Sure.
get on
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
satisfy first? Otherwise, you're going to get 400 calls to
Yeah.
the front desk and it's going to overwhelm your
Yeah.
staff.
And that particular conversation gave us a framework with Seattle Children's in particular, who has a very complex space because they're a foundation that provides the money. They're a research institute associated with the University of Washington, and they're a clinical care hospital. And the project that we were doing was their website navigation and homepage. And we needed all of those interests represented. And of course, every one of
Because
those
if you asked any one of those whether a taxonomy worked, their answers would be different because they want their stuff front and center.
Sure. And each of the representatives of those organizations knows that what they do is important. But we were able to have a conversation by framing it that way to say, okay, are your donors going to get in the lifeboat if the children aren't already there? No. So when you prioritize something, are your doctors going to get on board for your research institute? Are your researchers going to get on board if the clinical care isn't there that's part of the organization? No. So it was a way to have that conversation. It broke down what was complicated about what we were trying to help them prioritize, but without removing the complexity of their organization. So we simplified it. I'm sorry, we didn't simplify it, we clarified it.
We clarified it.
I like that difference.
And we broke down the old language because it wasn't just donors and doctors and parents. We broke down to the wants and needs. The personas we created were around wants and needs. And wants and needs tend to straddle old language like donors and parents. Like both of them would want to know what's the latest research study that's had some success.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't necessarily go to different places and to find that on a website. And I think we had 15 people in that workshop.
Ridiculous number of stakeholders. And they were like high level stakeholders too.
All of them.
It
was like, even the introductions I was terrified to do just because it was like, how long is this going to take with how much posturing? They're all great people.
Yeah.
So I'm
fantastic group
generalizing, but we did it. We slowed down, we backed up to stuff that any group says they already have, which is clear goals. None of them do. And then we did this persona workshop where together collaboratively, we came up with these alignment personas that you could say they weren't based on data, except that would be to say that there was no data in the heads of any of the people in the room.
Yeah.
And I think the story you tell about that project is such a powerful one for the process, which is that you said 4 months later, you came back in to show designs to those 15 people.
Yep.
Why don't you tell that?
Yeah. So a few months later, I had page level wireframes of the information hierarchy of their homepage and their navigation. And every decision, and I worked with my primary contact there who was very involved. And this was a conversation, a lot of back and forth beforehand to make sure that we got it right. Every decision in where information was placed on their homepage and what kind of information hierarchy it had or importance it had, might be how they think about it, was tied back to those priorities and was tied back to the research that we had done with their users and with their other stakeholders and with information about what's on their site and what they're trying to accomplish in their business goals. But we could tie each one of those decisions back so that we didn't have any of this, but if someone said, no, this is unacceptable, my thing has to be higher, then it's no longer an argument or a power grab or whoever the loudest person in the room is or the highest ranking person in the room is. We can just walk it back to the conversation and say, oh, okay, so what did we not uncover before that we now need to cover, we now need to bring into this conversation? What of the rationale and the research and the principles we developed for how this particular design comes together was wrong? Because we should always reserve the right to be wrong.
And have the goals changed, which they're allowed to do it. They're the client.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
But then it changes it from an argument between two like knights on horseback jousting at each other based on their titles.
Yeah.
Into a common enemy who is like, what does the king want? Or I don't know. I lost it with the medieval, but it's not about then who is the smartest or most powerful in the room. It's more about are these numbers really the most critical to our business? Can we all agree on that?
Mm-hmm.
And if we can, then does that change the answer to this argument?
Mm-hmm. I'm looking for the book because I can't remember the title, but there's a book on negotiations, not on that shelf, by the Harvard something institute, decades old, that talks about the difference between position and interests. And if in this,
And you said that you were talking about values too in
yeah,
some
and
of your
value,
notes from
yeah,
the conference.
yeah, but the difference of the trap potentially with stakeholders and getting political about design decisions is that people have a tendency to stake out positions and say, this is the position I'm taking, and then they defend that position. Whereas if we can identify what everyone's interests are, then we can find a solution that matches those. Because if you have two positions and you can't be in two places, everything can't be at the top of the page, right? That's one position. You can't reconcile that. You have to make compromises. And a compromise is a space in between positions where no one's happy. Whereas if you can articulate interests, then, and this does tie back to the values a little bit too, but if we figure out what everyone's interest is and what they're trying to accomplish, then we can find a spot and a configuration of an information design or solution that actually meets all of those interests. But we have to get away from the positions.
So like at Seattle Children's, they're without any data I can say, one of their shared interests is going to be fundraising.
Yeah.
Right. And what it is that makes people open up their pocketbooks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And so a shared position would also be being able to show off the achievements in research or in number of patients helped or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's in all of their best interests to make that rise to the top of the page.
Yeah.
Even if that means that their particular program's involvement in that is 4 inches down on the page.
Yeah.
I think this is something that another point of this podcast, this experience by osmosis thing, and the persona that I have in my head for corporate underpants is Sora seeking seniority. This is somebody who has been doing something in one of our fields, and perhaps you can talk to this for, there's information architects, there's little baby fledgling information architects, and there's medium-sized, awkward-looking information architects. I'm thinking birds now, right? And then there's fully mature swans like you. What is it that, what are those moments? For me, it's like realizing that you can't stay out of politics. If you want to be great at your job, you can't stay out of politics, because politics is having all of the stuff that we've been talking about can be summarized as politics. It's not, it's more than that. It's positions, it's values, it's business goals, it's all of those things. And as somebody you are a super academic brain. You read everything, you process everything. You're like the ultra student. But you had to practice. You had to get your point across. You had to start dealing with these dum-dums. Do you remember that kind of moment?
Yeah, and I was looking for.
It feels like they're dum-dums when you first notice it. It feels like everybody else.
Yeah, that's true. And what I was looking through is the notes I was taking at the conference. One of the other things that came up was this. There was a strong theme throughout the whole conference of friction. Of slowing things down, and what we just described with the Seattle Children's Project, and even with the silly analogies we use, my motorcycle analogy that crashed earlier, or our Titanic analogy, like all of those things introduce a little bit of friction into the conversation by introducing a new element and getting people to slow down. And instead of jumping right to a solution, to work through a story. It turns out that if we frame those correctly, they're fun because stories are fun. That's why we use them. We think in stories. They hold lessons for us. So that idea of slowing things down in the thread of what we've been talking about, I think is important. To your point about people absorbing through osmosis, there was another quote that I was looking for to give credit to the speaker who brought it up, but it's from Sean. I forget Sean's first name. But the idea that we know more than we can write down.
Donald Sean. I see it in your notes.
Yes, thank you. Donald Sean, that we know more than we can write down, and we know more than we can articulate. And that, I think, is something that comes with experience. And that is by slowing down, by introducing friction into our process, whether it's through stories or through tools or through workshops. I think we give ourselves the space to help to bring other people into that zone of the things that I know, but I can't explain. And it's not that I can't explain them because I don't want to or because I'm inarticulate but it's because they are the connections between all the little pieces of knowledge and all of the things that we've read and experienced that you might call intuition. And it's that friction that we introduce that creates a space for that to happen.
I think it's also the grand irony here is that as you get more advanced in any field, I think people who become most successful at doing the work are the ones that are brave enough to bring things back to basics.
Yeah.
Which is why I continue to rant about things. And it's also like why, especially with respect to the idea of friction, one of the things I recommend to everybody is if you're having trouble with a project, stop and create a glossary.
Yeah.
And that's a friction way because what you can do is my story is that I was working with two founders who were doing this blockchain project to do these rails for online banking transactions, whatever. And we were working for these guys were used to working with each other. They're both brilliant and we're sure that they were onto something. After 2 days of full-on conversations, we realized they were defining the word institutional differently.
Yeah.
And we only found that out because I said, I don't understand what institutional
Yeah.
means. And that's probably the most valuable sentence that I, as the senior product designer, offered into their business evolution.
Yeah.
I don't understand what this word means.
Yeah.
And that slowing down takes a bravery. It takes enough experience to know that everybody's confused. And that if you're willing to take the heat for that, that you're doing a great service to the business, to the product, to the users.
Yeah. Yeah. The idea of a glossary is just huge because we talk past each other in these tiny little ways that amplify over the course of a system to be these huge dysfunctions. There's a quote that I believe it's the motto of special ops, maybe, that slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
That's been coming up a lot lately.
Yeah. There's a third line to that is something like blood is slippery. I just leave that one off.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. It's special ops.
I think slow is smooth and smooth is fast may be coming up because AI is the opposite. And blockchain was the opposite too, which is why I was used to it before AI came along, which is that everything's fast. We just do it fast, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And Mark just gave the Richard Saul Wurman quote, you only understand something new relative to something you already understand, which is also a super powerful principle that I often bring into conversations. This idea of friction, as you point out, Tamara, is very much antithetical to AI, to let's just get everything generated and it'll be out there, versus slowing down and saying, are we really meaning the same things when we say these words? There's another thread that's been burbling in the back of my brain as we've been talking, and that is the idea of rooting concepts in the real world, or the idea of what's the simple concept underlying your coupon, for instance. And this gets back to accessibility as well. What I would not be surprised if the coupon experience you described is also one that is inaccessible to people that are using assistive technology. And while that...
Oh my God, I can't even imagine what they're experiencing.
Exactly. And that alone is reason enough to go back and rethink this. But as an information architect, what I find is that if we have defined the knowledge objects and the information in our space clearly and consistently, then web accessibility, which is a well-documented and well-understood but often neglected aspect of web design, if we've defined our objects clearly, web accessibility is almost trivial to bring in. It becomes then just a matter of making sure that you code the right things. If you don't know what your objects are, or your content operating system is designed by default, it's Franken designed of like parts stitched together from various corpses, accessibility is a nightmare because nothing is clear, and the tools that exist, the very good tools that exist to make things accessible, can't work with this mishmash of dead limbs that you've stitched together.
That's another really interesting point, right? We know how to do accessibility.
Yeah.
The tools are there, the techniques are there, the buttons are there, the readers are there, right? Of course, it all needs to be improved, but we're not even using all the stuff that we have because we're dealing with such a mess that we can't even apply the tools that we
Yeah.
have.
And there's a corollary that people who, when I was in college, I applied for a job I'm glad I didn't get, for a website. And I did an evaluation of their website. This is when I was a grad student. And it was in, I don't know, probably 2010. And they were doing a table layout design to do the visual design. So it was all like images and tables, and there was no accessibility of any of this. And it was a journal. And I did this as part of, hey, you should hire me to work on your website. So I'm like, I pointed out these things are accessible. And the professor, I don't think there's any blind people reading our website. And I was just like, screw you. Because eventually, like, you are going to need these kinds of tools, and also doing it right, it brings you other benefits. And one of those other benefits, not that we need additional benefits to make things work for everyone, but one of those benefits, again, came up in this conversation I had with a potential client. What the hell are we going to do when AI and Perplexity and LLM-based tools upend the way that we publish everything? If you have a information design that is based on how knowledge objects operate against your business goals and the context in which your business operates, then building an accessible product, there's a clear path to that. Adapting that information that you're trying to communicate to whatever comes next, there's a clear path to that because you've defined that system. If you bring your Franken website to that system, you're not going to be able to control your message. You're not going to be able to update your message. You will have a hard time establishing trust, and you'll have a hard time communicating with the audiences that are now saying, why would I go to your website when I can just ask this tool that's already on my phone what your opening hours are, or what the cost of your product is, or how much the tuition is to go to your school?
It's the next pageless website kind of
It-
problem.
It's the next page's website kind of problem. And if you've convinced yourself that your goal is publishing pages, and you're not a clickbait website that the only goal is to publish pages, and those shouldn't exist anyway. But if your goal is to communicate information about your products or your services or the cause you're trying to support, your goal isn't to publish pages. It's to get the ideas from your organization into other people's heads. And as Karen McGrain writes in Content Strategy for Mobile very brilliantly, you don't decide what device your users use to access your content. They do. And this applies for LLMs as well.
All right. So in the last few minutes
Rant
here,
closed.
you're someone who keeps track of all of the bleeding edge thinking and academic level thinking and complex thinking around complexity. For the people who are hopefully still have their jobs and information architecture, content structure are part of their jobs,
Mhm.
what do you think they should?
Hmm.
Is there any? What are the three things you think they should think about tomorrow?
Yeah.
Or one thing? What is it that you think
Yeah.
they should be thinking about?
I would first echo advice that I've heard or read in professional circles is you can't keep up with everything. So
No.
don't. And I, even in just trying to keep up with the updates of the tools that I use, last week was Figma and Sanity both had these major updates and releases. And I'm just like, how do I keep up with all of this? You can't. But it means that the people you're trying to help also can't keep up with it. So if you can bring something to them that provides value because they're trying to sell their widgets, or they're trying to get their research funded, or they have other jobs, whole other jobs that they're doing. Even if you can't keep up with everything, you can find pockets where you can help. And that, I think, identifying the places where you are going to focus is important. It's important in user experience design to have kind of a broad base. And I think this is something Jared Spool has written about recently as well, that the era of the hyper specialized, I only do user research, is probably coming to a close, and maybe for good, right? That it helps for people to have broader experience. But for me, and I think I say this with some reservation, because it is very much a position of privilege of someone who does have a job and is educated, not to mention being a white male. But do the thing that you're interested in, for me, has been helpful. If you're passionate about LMs, or you're passionate about accessibility or headless design, learn about that. Use that as an area to focus and use that to orient yourself. It's not, I don't have any evidence to prove this, but it's been something that I've been following for years. And why I've been independent for so long is it allows me to follow through with the things that interest me the most. And what I found, and again, some of this is privilege, but what I found is that tends to lead to ways that I can help people. Whereas when I've been working for organizations that kind of constantly shift me from one RFP to another in order to win projects that are all the same or all not very interesting, I very much felt like I was floundering and not doing much.
And whatever you're interested in, you crave making sense of. And if you can make it make sense
Yeah.
to yourself, then you can potentially make it make sense
Yeah.
to other
Yeah,
people.
exactly. Yeah. Very well put.
In the great translation job that all of us are in.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, thank you so much. The one complaint I have is that we did not get to see even one kitten out of the 2 that are available in your household. We will have to rectify that with another visit, I hope. Thanks for your time, everybody. Follow Andy Fitzgerald on LinkedIn and on andyfitzgerald.com, and you will get really great thinking about sanity and other sane
and
things.
lowercase. Yes. Tamara, thanks so much for having me on. It's been a great conversation.
Oh, thanks so much, Andy. Okay, we'll see you next time on a all new Corporate Underpants Live. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Corporate Underpants, and there's lots more to come. If you have any projects that you need my help on, if you're interested in coaching to help you become a more senior product leader through understanding alignment and politics, or if you're interested in any of the classes or other learning materials and books that I'm developing, please visit my website, www.adlininc.com, and get in touch. Let's talk.